Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this virtual strategy day arranged by HashiCorp in partnership with Palo Alto. We are delighted that you can spend this hour and a half with us this morning. We're obviously recording this webinar as well, so you can watch that afterwards, or for people that could not attend in person, you can review that at your own leisure. The topic of today is exploring the future of modern service networking. And we plan to spend an hour and a half discussing various topics involving console, the future of console, and also how console and the HashiCorp stack can integrate with Palo Alto solutions as well. My name is Laurie McLaughlin, so I run the sales organization here at HashiCorp for the UK and Ireland. And in terms of the overall agenda today, I'm going to cover just a very brief bit of background about HashiCorp and our solutions, and then going to hand over to Pedro Coca, who's our head of solution engineering in the UK, who's going to discuss the future of modern service networking. James Holland from Palo Alto is going to talk us through Palo Alto's take on security automation. And then Jason Broadbent, also from HashiCorp, is going to talk through the next future releases in the HashiCorp console roadmap. We're also going to do a Q&A, and I'll round off at the end. And on the subject of Q&A, we, if you've got the next slide, Pedro, please, we do invite you to submit your questions using Zoom. We'll try and answer them in Zoom as we go, but also at the end, if we haven't managed to get to them due to time, we will post any responses with the follow-up email to the webinar. Many of you will know HashiCorp, potentially not for the name HashiCorp. You may know some of our products, and it's quite likely that you will use one or more of them, at least in the open source version, or potentially some of you will already be using the enterprise versions. We are in the business really of provisioning, securing, connecting, and running applications and the infrastructure that supports them. We are, in many respects, the glue that kind of makes the multi-cloud world work with the on-premise world. And as many people are aware, we have now got quite an expansive range of solutions, ranging from Packer now to Waypoint. And been quite a journey over the last 7 or 8 years. HashiCorp was founded by Mitchell Hashimoto and Armand Dadgar back in 2013, and they were doing some early work in AWS at the time. And they originally developed, Packer as the first kind of open source project, which was, fairly closely followed after that by Consul and Terraform. And we started to really work very closely with practitioners and build a community all around the world. We call that the HashiCorp user group, which many of you, I'm sure, have maybe attended at one point or another. And that kind of evolved into our HashiConfs as well, where people really started to get to know HashiCorp and also the products. Achieved a massive milestone in 2016 with over 1 million downloads of our software. And rolling through to today, we went to an IPO in December, and we can now count over, well over 2,000 customers worldwide and 36,000 members of our HashiCorp user groups. And we certainly wouldn't have got there on our own. And we constantly are very, very focused on building, maintaining, and nurturing our partner ecosystem. Clearly, we have very deep relationship with all of the major cloud service providers, deep integrations with all of their services. And also, we have a whole variety of different technology integration partnerships, depending on the different products that we have. Palo Alto is a very important integration partner, for example, with Terraform, but also has great integrations with our Vault and Console products as well. And we have many hundreds of partners now across the whole partner ecosystem. And just talking just very briefly about the UK, as this is a UK organized webinar, we have well over now 100 UK-based employees, 200 enterprise customers, and we can count 8 out of 10 of the top UK banking and financial companies as customers, and many of this kind of challenger banks as well. So quite a big enterprise now, with mature product lines that are actively supporting the kind of backbone of infrastructure environments in many organizations. And with that, I'd now like to hand over to Pedro Coca, who's going to talk to us about the future of modern service networking.
Thanks a million, Larry. Thanks a million. So we're going to spend some time talking about the future of modern service networking, but we have also time to take a look at the past and see, what were the origins of those challenges. We're going to take a look to, some metrics that we collected, some references, and, overall, a bit of context on that regard. So I'm going to turn off my video so you can have full attention to the slides. And I'm going to introduce myself. I'm the Regional Director of Solution Engineering in the UK and Ireland. And we are basically the point of contact between customers and prospects. And also we talk with the product team. So we get all that feedback from the team. And based on that information, we have put together some slides. So in order to provide some context, now I don't know if someone in the audience used to name their servers you change your certificates once a year, maybe once in a decade. But now we are in the middle of that transformation, that paradigm shift in terms of infrastructure, and we are moving to a way more complex landscape. So we are not just using the systems of record in our data centers, but also engaging with systems of engagements in public clouds. So we have a way more complex. But before delving into this huge transformation and the challenges that this entails, we're gonna take a look at the past. So the past of networking. Maybe you're a bit surprised because the title of the presentation was the future of service networking. But I think it's good to take a look at the past. And I don't know if someone, and feel free to put that on the chat, if someone knows who this gentleman is, and what is that diagram at the right side of the slide. So the diagram is quite easy. The diagram is a map of the internet in the 80s, exactly in the year 1982, and those were early days. I don't know if you remember like early days in the 90s on the internet, but things were really manual. Indeed, this gentleman over here, and I don't know if someone guess or knows his name, is John Postel. So John Postel was an American computer scientist, and he made significant contributions to the deployment of the internet, and in particular regarding the standards. So in the picture, you can see him with the top level domains. You can see the US and several European countries, especially in the right hand of the picture, including the UK. And he was contributing to the private network ranges RFC, something that was released in 1994. And indeed, before the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority was set at the end of the 90s, or in the middle of the 90s, if you wanted to guarantee that your IP address was unique, you would check that with him, with Jonathan Postel. So the perimeter model, something that is probably way more familiar with you, that castle and moat approach to the network security, everything started with IP addresses and the way that they are assigned. So all thanks to John Postel. So after that historical remark, we can get a view about a more modern view of the perimeter model. So securing a data center used to be quite easy, kind of, right? So everything was unauthorized, if everything was blocked, it was out of our data center. And then the networks were trusted, and applications and databases can interconnect between them very easily. There are a castle and moat approach, or those four walls, and that trusted network that was protecting our assets. But this modern, or so-called modern perimeter is attacked every single day, as very complex attacks are crafted and are able to install malware when someone inside that castle, inside our data center, inside this trusted network, clicks on a link, and then a payload is installed in that machine, and that is the patient zero. So if you have like high trust inside your network, and then you get that patient zero, is about moving in your data center freely. So many times, if you think about really complex attacks, this is not the case. Andre Pimentel and I were talking about malware just like last month. You can check that webinar. There's a whole industry, and you can buy those spear phishing attacks on the deep web, and then security in a data center is no longer an easy task. And you can set up as many firewall rules as you want. You can set up as many firewall exceptions as you want, that you will end ineffectively having a big monster that nobody dares to touch. And we have been talking with UK financial institutions with firewall rules that are up to 1 million, and sometimes even more. So there's a really cool analogy that is in the Zero Trust Networks book from O'Reilly, that perimeter firewalls have become the equivalent of building a wall around a city to keep out the spies. So this is a reality, and this model is rendered obsolete when you have multiple microservices running in your cloud provider of choice. Your databases and systems of record maybe are in the data center, and maybe that application from that company that was acquired 2 years ago is running in a different cloud provider. So this poses a new set of challenges. So the challenges is that every single tier that we face, the infrastructure tier, the security tier, and in the particular case of the networking tier, we're gonna talk extensively about it. There are different tools, different technologies to do pretty much the same thing. So there are different ways to do the provisioning of infrastructure, with depending if you are talking about your data center, your AWS cloud, your Google Cloud, Azure, and the same happens with the networking and security. There's a different identity model around security, and in terms of networking, each cell in this matrix that is getting more and more complex every day have multiple technologies, multiple ways to do things. So how can you the challenge is, how can you tackle this reality so you can have a common way to do things, right? A common workflow. And we're going to talk about this, and also the huge transformation that has happened in the applications arena. So historically, large applications have multiple subsystems that were or even are put together by different teams to release, to test, to update that monolithic application. And those teams need to be in constant communication and synchronization with each other if they want to test, if they want to release, if they want to update that application at any given time. So you find a really tight coupled business logic is really painful to debug, to deploy, and the different subsystems, those users, payments, products, inventory subsystems that you can see on the slide, have again, as I was saying, like really tight coupled business logics, and represent some challenges when you depend on each other, and you lack the flexibility to do that update, to do that release, or fix that back, right? And for the last decade or so, the industry have been moving to microservices, and with microservices, we decouple those subsystems, so we can achieve a larger degree of agility and independence when we work, and we can use, for example, different programming languages. We can have our own cadence, and what we have gained with in terms of development agility comes with some operational complexity, with some trade-off. So before, with a monolith, communication was happening just as an in-memory call, and now with microservices, the whole communication happens over the network. So there's a need to discover those microservices. So if you see the slide, where is the payments API? Where is the ratings API? We need service discovery capabilities, and we need a common catalog, a common registry. And we need to do that programmatically to enable automation. We're going to talk about how automation should be an enabler in the following minutes. So there is a need to as well to authenticate and secure the interactions between those microservices, and we need to provide some rules to govern the communication between those microservices, and something that we call service segmentation. So those two big paradigms shift around the way applications are developed, and how the data center is no longer the the main point, and we are interacting with different clouds, have set different challenges in service networking, in service communication. So these are really interesting challenges that we're going to talk about in a minute, and Consul is addressing those challenges. So we're gonna start with a set of challenges around traffic management. So if you have your microservices up and running, how do you manage the different requests? How do you manage the traffic? So in a more complex scenario with microservices in place, where several instances of a given microservices, maybe the user API have different versions, user API version 1, user API version 2. How can you do some kind of traffic splitting? So not only based on the service that is targeted, but also based on the versions like we were mentioning, and you can implement canary testing strategies, or maybe blue-green deployments. So you need to be able to tackle that, and also some of the things that are needed is that whenever one of the services can potentially have issues, you shouldn't be able to let that issue cascade to other services. And how can you prevent a network or service failure to cascade to other failures and other services? So you should be able to implement that pattern, the circuit breaker pattern, that allows you to protect your service mesh from that failure. You need also to get some health checks around those microservices, and you need to do routing based on HTTP parameters. So all those challenges, can be posed when you have that microservices approach. So a service mesh is basically abstracting and controlling the traffic behavior outside the application code. So another set of challenges is about security. So we have been talking about how the different microservices can talk between them. So when we are running those microservices, Consul will be providing a root of trust in terms of the different certificates, so the microservice can establish communication channels securely. So you can standardize the different audit and encryption requirements for your applications, and you can achieve a true zero trust with less development friction. And the last set of challenges in terms of microservices adoption is observability. So many times you need to, or in the past that there were efforts to implement different code libraries for logging, for tracing, for telemetry, but this has been proven really complex. So how can you collect those application metrics? How can you collect those application traces in an efficient way, and in a way that you can address the production requirements for compliance and security? So you need to have that foundation with open standards and metrics collection, and service mesh, something like Consul, standardized telemetry outside of application code, and allows you to to tackle this challenge. So overall, the solution is to implement Consul as a central shared service platform with a single control plane across service networking in particular. And in that way, service networking will address those challenges that we have been talking about. So they can discover other services and send traffic from one to the other. They can secure the interactions between those services, and can be able to rule which services are allowed to communicate with other services. In a way, they can automate the configuration and the security of those elements, scaling up and down, moving between different nodes, because now they are going to be interacting with the key networking components like Palo Alto Network, for example. And you need to manage the access to those services and APIs, whether requests are coming from our network or outside of our networks. And Consul is designed to solve all these problems, setting a central shared service platform with a single control plane. And doing that, I mean, we have, in order to illustrate those challenges, we have a recent survey from CK Research found that found that a large number of organizations, they spend time doing manual updates. So if you have to update different policies, different rules manually on your networking components, then automation is not in place. And we're going to see how automation needs to be in place to act as an enabler. So modern service networking does not require an extensive set of new protocols, but you need to use existing technologies in new ways. So those interactions between the control plane and the data plane are key points requiring automation. And we're going to see a bit of a refresher of what is a service mesh. But in configuration and policy, you need to have that automation in place. If things cannot be dynamically updated, efficiency and trust are basically unattainable. And we were talking about the control plane and the data plane of a service mesh. And the control plane is basically responsible for providing the management of the APIs, maintaining the global state, coordinating traffic, and basically talking with the data plane, which can be proxies or can be hardware appliances. And the control plane in a service mesh must be highly available and fault tolerant. And if you want to provide an industry-leading service mesh solution, you need to be able to do it at a scale, at a truly industrial scale. So we have put Consul to the test, and we can spend some time now talking about the Consul global scale benchmark. So Consul can run a large number of applications at a scale on various runtime environments, and the benchmark was meant to exercise those capabilities. So we partnered with AWS, who was providing the compute credits, and Datadog, who was providing the metrics, and then it's a really interesting reading. So the key results show that with 5 Consul servers, we were able to deliver control plane updates to more than 172,000 service instances in containers in less than a second. So you can check all the information, and basically is to prove that the HashiCorp Consul is a service mesh that can scale to a very large number of nodes and services. And you can do it in a wide variety of environments. That's Kubernetes, Nomad, virtual machines, and bare metal. If you want more information about how did we put Consul to the test, you can check hashicorp.com/CGSB, Consul Global Scale Benchmark. And as I said before, it's a really interesting reading, so check it out. So now that we have been talking about scale, I think it's good to go back to other aspects like simplicity. So we're gonna talk about HCP Consul and how came into HashiCorp, how HashiCorp Cloud Platform and HCP Consul became to life, because we have been always focusing on helping people to build modern applications in a cloud setting. but we were getting feedback from our practitioners because there were many challenges with initial deployments. There are challenges getting up and running the solutions, and there are many moving pieces that need to be considered. And many times after installing, the ongoing challenge was to manage those tools, the operational complexity of those tools. You need to update, you need to monitor those things, and there's a lot of moving parts in that multi-cloud world. So our practitioners were actually demanding the consumption of our tooling as a service, as a cloud service. So one of the things that we had in mind when we were envisioned the HashiCorp cloud platform is that we need a fully managed platform. That fully managed platform was HCP, the HCP platform, and was announced in 2020. And we start gathering all the feedback from the experience of our customers, demanding to make things easier. So we built this platform with three main principles in mind. First, that is easy to deploy with just pushing a button, and users can create an account and launch it, from a dashboard, like really easy. Then the second principle is that it's a fully managed infrastructure. You don't need to deal with the nuts and bolts of a particular update. All the details in the technology is a fully end-to-end managed service. And finally, the last goal is to create a seamless workflow for deploying our tools in any cloud, in that multi-cloud reality that we live in. So the value of HCP console is that things are secure by default. So you have that peace of mind knowing that the services that you put in HCP console are secure by default with that deny policy, and you have that simple microservice networking. So console helps to simplify the management of microservice networking, right? So you have your users and you have the ability to improve that observability, that performance, that traffic management that we were talking. So all those things are basically the value of HCP console, and we have conveyed into basically two main use cases. The first one is simple service discovery, where an organization can start using console for the service discovery, and then the following one is service mesh as a service, consuming service mesh as a service, as a cloud service. So those are the main use cases of HCP console. And when you implement this solution, you clearly start seeing that the reduction on the operational burden. So you don't have to update, you don't have to manage the platform, and then you can focus in what really matters, and you can improve that productivity, and you can reduce the risk associated to managing a really complex solution, right? So those are basically the main benefits of running HCP console. And if you want to get started with console, you can just create a console cluster. You can connect the different elements, and you can deploy into different platforms. It's quite easy. So there will be a note, a call to action in a few slides, right? So we have been talking about the benchmark. We have been talking about HCP console, and I think it's appropriate to talk about a customer case study. So probably many of you are familiar with Mercedes-Benz. It's a European automobile vendor, and then they have a research and development department that has been able to develop the most advanced automotive technology and design in the world, right? So they wrote this customer case with us, where they illustrate their journey. How were they able to run 200 plus services on different clusters? They did it in a fast way. So they went from POC to production in a month, and they spend minutes instead of days trying to discover and connect their services. So with that, I would like to present the results of this use case. And if you want to no more. There's a whole talk about the customer case study of Mercedes-Benz, because they were presenting in one of our events. So this to wrap up this blog, I would like to provide a call to action. So if you want to learn more about Consul, you can check our Lens platform. If you want to try ACP Consul, you can also try it out. You can sign up for free in the platform. And if you want to register for a public workshop, there's a link to the events page. And also, if you want to book a private workshop with our teams, just let us know and click on that Google form, and you can get a private workshop with us. The last thing I wanted to mention is that hopefully, if the pandemic is over soon, we can see each other in May in KubeCon, because we're going to be there. So remember that call to action items, and hopefully we can see you soon. And with that, back to you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Pedro. Really enjoyed that presentation, and it's quite incredible when we look at the early diagrams of the internet with John Postel to see just how far everything has come. So really exciting. So someone's at my front door. Good timing in a webinar, as always. Without further ado, just to keep to time, we've heard kind of HashiCorp's view of the world and seen the evolution of networking from the 80s through to today. I'd like to now hand over to James Holland from one of our great partners, Palo Alto, who is going to give us their view on the world. So James, over to you.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Appreciate that, and thanks HashiCorp for inviting us to share our perspective around this topic. I'm going to be building on what Pedro was discussing just now, and clearly bringing a specific focus on security more than anything within the modern network automation landscape that we're in these days. So yeah, my name's James. I focus specifically on automation at Palo Alto Networks, and nice to talk to you today. And look, if you don't know, I'll give you the brief 30-second view of what Palo Alto Networks does these days. You may not be fully up to date, and this is our corporate vision, focused all around cybersecurity. Our mission is to be a cybersecurity partner of choice for the organizations we work with, protecting our digital way of life as we have these days. And we work with the vast majority of the largest organizations in the world, as well as the smallest, and that goes for the UK too, amongst the largest organizations here as well. And look, I'm not here today to deliver the company's entire vision, clearly, but it's hard to ignore that some of the statistics we talk about when we are at the very high level of talking about cybersecurity are very, very key to network automation as well, particularly in modern cloud architectures. Some of the things we're talking about here are pretty much the same topics that Pedro was discussing in terms of visibility and observability, architecture patterns that need to be simple, as well as that 95% figure, which sticks out very much in terms of wanting to automate. And this is the same for the rest of cybersecurity in general. As Pedro was discussing, we've moved to a world where deploying applications and operating infrastructure has changed dramatically in recent years. Waterfall to agile development has got much faster, much shorter feedback loops. The move from monoliths being broken up to microservices for that scalability and interdependence. The fact that DevOps that culture has sought to bring silos together and increase speed to market. And finally, the fact that cloud has moved from what was initially maybe niche use cases to become the default target model for operations for a lot of organizations. And that's the world we live in today. Now, if that's how things have changed dramatically in the wider aspects, then security clearly needs to have changed and should change to keep pace with this. And what it means for security is that we need to be integrated across the entire life cycle. It's no longer acceptable to be just an afterthought or a final gate in a process for a deployment. If releasing software has gone faster, that's great, but we can't actually shortcut security. We need to establish a way to have trust and guardrails and not have to rely on micromanagement that slows things down. And cloud environments are constantly evolving. That's part of the benefit of moving towards cloud. You can have new workloads whenever you wish, ephemeral instances, different architectures, and security has to be able to be dynamic to what is a constant change. So what we find is the traditional legacy, almost, I guess, security practices of bolting it on as a final gate pretty late in the design, if not late in the deployment process, as well as manually trying to keep up with services, servers, containers that we are deploying, as well as depending on human processes for security changes. It just doesn't work anymore. It's difficult to manage. It's almost impossible to automate. And anything that relies on human ticket-based systems is only going to impede what your organization is trying to do in speeding up your time to value. It should therefore be no surprise maybe that what we're looking to target here with security, specifically around network automation, is to build it in from the very start of our architecture, to have an outcome where we are dynamically understanding workloads and services coming and going, scaling up and down, and allowing them to connect to their dependencies, which means we automatically have to change things like firewall rules as our continuous integration, deployment and delivery processes kick in and operate. And if you're an organization that is driving towards a zero trust strategy, that's exactly what you're looking for, because you'll be looking to make sure that only the right things can talk to the right other things in the right way, at the right time, in the right place. Now, HashiCorp and Palo Alto Networks together have various integrations and ways that we can allow you to deploy a secure cloud operating platform. This means building security in, automating the security posture so that it changes as it's needed, and generally building that robust security strategy that you want for a cloud deployment. The integration points, as you can see here, are many and varied. Let's take a look at them in the scope of day one, doing deployments, but also then day two, our ongoing runtime and operations. Now, in day one, we're looking probably primarily at Terraform as the place to go and define infrastructure as code and deploy your infrastructure. And clearly you can deploy all your infrastructure as required, as well as including the next generation firewalls from Palo Alto Networks. So you can see them in the top right there, the PA, the VM, and the CN series. That's just the different form factors, because you can deploy it as a virtual machine, for example, or even as a container. And clearly, to deploy them securely, we're going to need various API keys and secrets. Vault helps us with that. And we also have our Prisma Cloud and the latest addition to Prisma Cloud platform, Bridge Crew. They also have Terraform providers, meaning that you can programmatically control those cloud security components as well. So Terraform gives us the one-stop shop to be able to deploy and configure all of these security controls in the same way that your teams are deploying the rest of their cloud infrastructure, which helps you simplify your operations. And then, of course, day two comes along. There's probably still more integration there with Terraform as more services get deployed, things get changed in your infrastructure. But also Console, as Pedro was discussing, becomes the linchpin, really, for us as a security control device, as an enforcement point, to understand the changes in your infrastructure and be able to dynamically and automatically react to those changes. We take a sort of a deeper dive maybe into both of these scenarios. We'll start with day one. And infrastructure as code is an approach that many organizations are turning towards. Make sure deployment tasks repeatable, consistent. And once you have them as code, you can enable the automation of those deployment tasks. And it's especially important for security as well, that we could then also in those pipelines, in those routines, include tests to make sure that what we thought we were deploying has turned up in the way we expected it and doesn't have any security misconfigurations that we weren't expecting. Now, as I mentioned, in terms of HashiCorp, the Terraform allows us to go and deploy all of our infrastructure, including our next generation firewalls. Vault allows us to bring the secrets to the party that allow us to deploy them securely. But if you're wondering how you would go about deploying a VM series firewall, for example, or even the CN series as a container form factor, we have reference architectures that allow you to not have to start from scratch on that journey, and give you a leg up and give you a well-known good best practices way to start doing that. And when you bring all that together, it allows us through Terraform to go and provision everything from load balancers to microservices, service mesh, and the firewall next generation. And the second part of that is that we allow you to configure the rules, the objects, the VPNs, whatever else you need on your next generation firewall also through our providers for Terraform, and the modules as well that again help you not have to start from scratch. And the firewalls here could be helping in various different ways. The next generation firewall is great at protecting traffic from the internet. Clearly you want to allow access to your applications by your users, but we don't want to see any threats come in. We don't want to see anyone try to exploit any vulnerabilities. Also, we have the outbound use case where we clearly don't want to see our data or our intellectual property going out the front door. We also have the east-west use cases, and this is the lateral movement that we certainly don't want to see from a malicious point of view. And east-west goes not only between different microservices, between different tiers of your application, but also back to any other parts of your organization's wider infrastructure, not just maybe this particular cloud deployment, but any links that that cloud deployment has back to base, back to any other on-prem or colo or other cloud deployments. And the way to maybe think about why you need something like this is to consider an analogy with airport security, another high security environment. They want blanket coverage in terms of visibility. So they use security cameras ubiquitously across the estate to get full visibility of what's happening. Airports use boarding passes as well as badges for staff as well to make sure that only the right people can get to the right areas and obviously onto the correct planes as well. But even then, that's not enough. Once we have determined who should be allowed to go where, we also want to make sure that we are detecting and most importantly, preventing threats. Now, in the airport world, that's things like weapons and other restricted items that we shouldn't see going through boundaries. Now, if like airports, you as an organization are serious about preventing threats, then this is the kind of model you could choose to replicate. And when we think about the next generation firewalls, the visibility aspect, similar to the security cameras, is network visibility. And the fact that next gen firewalls work not only on IP addresses and ports, which in a cloud world can be quite ephemeral, but we're looking at identities, we're looking at applications and subcomponents of applications. Is this application XYZ, but also is it uploading, is it downloading, is it the chat feature, is it a data transfer feature, a file transfer feature? That's the kind of deep level of inspection we do, and that's the deep level of visibility you would get. Then we look at the access control portion, and this is again where, particularly if you're on that zero trust strategy, you want to know that you're allowing only the right people to talk to the right resources, only the right services to talk to the right other services in the right way, at the right time, in the right place, all of those key aspects. And that's again what the next generation firewall does. Again, not just at IP level, because very ephemeral in cloud, but at the identity level as well, even if it's down to cloud identity. And finally, just like the airport scanners, just like the X-ray machines, the next-gen firewall's there to ensure that there's no malware, there's no ransomware. We don't want to see exploits vulnerabilities being exploited, and we certainly don't want to see data being exfiltrated in any of those use cases, the inbound, the outbound, or the east-west lateral movement. Now, deploying your infrastructure as code, absolutely brilliant. And we've talked about how the next-generation firewall can help you secure that infrastructure in terms of the network security angle. What we also want to consider is securing the code itself. If you think about how infrastructure as code templates are used, a single misconfiguration in a single template that's used maybe hundreds of times can lead to hundreds of misconfigured services. And that could even be thousands of workloads or containers that you then need to remediate. And unfortunately, multiple studies have shown that the majority of cloud security incidents do start from a misconfiguration. And this is where Bridgecrew, as part of Prisma Cloud, in our cloud security platform, brings what we call codified security. And it is all about the security of that infrastructure as code and making sure that we give you multiple gates, multiple opportunities to stop those misconfigurations, leaving the code and getting into runtime, getting into your live environment. That's as early as the member of your staff who is typing away, creating the code in the first place. It could be the next gate where they're committing the code to a repository. It could be the next gate where we're looking at the CI pipeline. But there's multiple opportunities for you to stop those misconfigurations getting into live. And when we are in a live scenario, drift detection is very important. We want to make sure that what is in runtime matches what's in our infrastructure as code templates. And there's various reasons. Operationally, for your own organization, if something has had to be changed in the live infrastructure due to an incident or something else that's happened, maybe one of the failures that can happen, as Pedro was talking about, we want to make sure that that is either something that's temporary, or if it's going to become permanent, that we make sure our infrastructure as code is updated to reflect that. A worst case scenario, if someone malicious does make it inside an environment of yours and spins up some workloads to go and mine Bitcoins or whatever else they're doing, you definitely want to know about that and understand that there's rogue resources that don't match against your templates, and therefore drift detection becomes a very important topic when we talk about infrastructure as code. Now we come to day 2. We're in a steady state. I think the industry tends to spend less time talking about this as a whole, but it can be just as challenging, if not more so, than day 1, because once we are in the mode of using cloud, you find that change is a constant and happens very, very frequently, much more so than maybe previously. More deployments are going to arrive alongside your existing deployment. We've talked about incidents and failures, meaning on-the-fly changes. And this leads to an interesting problem for security teams, and it's this. This is quite an often quoted ratio, particularly within the DevSecOps community. And even if yours isn't quite so bad, we generally do tend to find that security are outnumbered by our partners in development and operations. What makes this even worse is that I'd argue that both the development and the operations communities have done a much better job at getting to automation quicker, and security were a little bit less mature in that area. So when we're trying to keep up with other teams that are outnumbering us and are more automated than us, you can see that our human-based approaches are doomed to failure. I mean, when I say failure, I mean that things like firewall rule changes are going to be an annoyance to the rest of the organization if we're taking days when they only take minutes to make changes. So what we want to imagine is a world where we could remove maybe the firewall rule change altogether, or if not, make it near real time. And certainly remove the human process from it, because look, no one likes firewall rule change processes anyway, do they? And this is where the next integration with HashiCorp and Palo Alto Networks is so important. Pedro talked extensively about how Console works and how the service mesh is such an advantage. And in order for us as a security enforcement point to reliably automate things like firewall rule bases, we need a reliable source of truth. A reliable source of truth is the foundation of any automation. And that's what Console gives us. And our next generation firewalls can integrate with Console to ensure that basically, long story short, the firewalls always have an up-to-date view of the world, of your infrastructure, of your workloads and your containers and virtual machines and such. Because we don't want to rely on ticket-based systems that means someone has to tell us manually that there's a new server or a new workload. So if we look at the diagram here, we can see our infrastructure as well as our VM series firewalls and all the things that may happen in your day 2 scenarios, such as scaling and in and out events, such as failures or various other things happening operationally, as well as decommissions. I mean, I've been in and around IT security for almost 20 years now, and very rarely do you see someone decommission something and also tell the security team to remove the firewall rules. That almost never happens, which is why firewall rule bases tend to only ever grow and never reduce. So those things happening are events that Console can tell us as a security enforcement point about. And with that data, we can go and reprogram the firewall rules automatically. And the great news is, as Pedro said, because Console is widely applicable, it's not just limited to public cloud, it will work equally as well as wherever you have your workloads, whether it is cloud or a more traditional on-prem or colo environment. This kind of approach to automating and having your firewall rules be dynamic is widely applicable wherever you are on your cloud journey, even if you're just starting or you're halfway through, it really doesn't matter. Now, this is a summary of the flow just to show you how simple this really is. On the left-hand side, we have our dynamic infrastructure, servers coming, going, containers coming, going, whatever it may be. And Consul does the job of being the mesh between all of those, as well as bringing all the metadata that we're interested in and sending that via Terraform sync to Panorama. Now, for those of you who don't know, Panorama is simply the central management platform for the Palo Alto Networks firewalls. And if you've already got Palo Alto Networks firewalls, you've likely already got Panorama. So there's nothing new there. But Panorama serves as a single integration point with Consul to feed all of that information about the changes in the infrastructure down to the firewalls so that they can reprogram themselves in terms of firewall rules. Now, the great news here is, from a Palo Alto Networks point of view, there's no licensing or anything else like that needed for this. These automation capabilities come as standard out of the box. And because Panorama is the place to integrate, it's only a single integration point. If you've got 10 of our firewalls, 100, 1,000 even, you don't have to integrate with Consul 10 or 100 times, you just do it once with Panorama. And the flow of metadata is still pretty much near real time, as fast as Consul can get it. And we've heard how fast Consul can work and how it can work at absolutely massive scale. And the idea here is, as you probably gathered, yes, we're propagating state and we're propagating state information from left to right in this diagram. But it's more than that. It's not only propagating state, it's reducing errors and potential failures in what would have previously been a manual process. It's enabling it to be super fast. So as soon as new workloads are provisioned in the infrastructure, the firewalls are updated near real time to allow access to them straight away in what would previously have been a manual process. So this makes your life a huge amount easier. And if we go back to where I started about 15 minutes ago, talking about visibility, simplicity, and automation, you can see it ticks all of those three boxes. The visibility of the changes in the infrastructure, a simple and single integration point, and an automated outcome. Now, as folks that concentrate on security at Palo Alto Networks, we know risk presents itself all over the organization, let alone just cloud environments. And our threat research team, Unit 42, recently did a cloud security report, went and scoured the internet, looking at various infrastructure as code repositories and other cloud repositories. And these are some of the things that we found, and it shows that we've still maybe as an industry got a little way to go until we get better adoption of what we would consider best practices. I'm not sure many organizations would want almost half of their storage and databases to not be encrypted. That doesn't sound like a good place to be. So the final piece of this whole puzzle of automating your security in and around your cloud infrastructures in a modern architecture is Prisma Cloud, which is part of our platform that focuses solely on cloud infrastructure. It's broken up into 5 pillars to make it easier to understand for you. And the far left-hand side is the pillar that we've already talked about, which is the DevSecOps pillar, focusing around code security. This is what Bridgecrew brought to market. And this is around ensuring your infrastructure as code is secure. The other 4 pillars focus more around the runtime security. So the posture management, ensuring that your cloud environments are running towards some kind of best practices, but also you can do your compliance reporting and checking there and detect and respond to threats that may occur because of your cloud posture. Looking at things like how you provision storage, how you provision VMs, how you provision workloads. And when you are provisioning those workloads, the 3rd pillar there, the workload protection, is where we would want you to have the ability to prevent, say, exploits to the most recent vulnerabilities. There's been a couple of very high severity, let's call it, vulnerabilities recently that I'm sure you're all aware of. And look, whether you're using serverless applications, whether you're running containers or VMs, the workload protection there is equally applicable and works across the board. The cloud network security portion takes what we're talking about today and goes that one level deeper, where we can enforce very, very granular micro-segmentation, even down to individual containers if you need, individual pods. And of course, we can't have the cloud security conversation without talking about identity. identity and cloud security is so important where we don't have that traditional data center environment, as Pedro is talking about from back in the day. Everything now with cloud security is only an API away that's exposed to the internet. So the identity management is so crucial, and making sure that you're securely provisioning identity, not being overly permissive, is clearly a key part of that. So in the last couple of minutes there, I'm going to summarize what we think you should expect from adopting these kind of approaches and why it should be of interest to you. And the first one is you should be looking to increase the speed and agility of your IT organization. I'm sure you're always trying to do that. And what we can do with some of these approaches is we can reduce errors and we can reduce rework. That clearly speeds us up. We can reduce friction. We talked about how we don't need teams to have manual processes. And once we get the automated processes in place with the relevant guardrails, we're reducing friction, and all of that put together is where you get your time to value to be much better for your entire organization. And when we talk about security teams in particular, if we can remove them from having to work on some of the more routine and mundane things like simple rule-based updates on firewalls, we can free them off to go and do more valuable work. All those things that have been on their radar for a while, things that they've targeted and they're sometime in the future, we can allow them some time to go and actually do that. Third is we want you to be able to reduce some of the frustration and friction between the security teams and the rest of the organization and the other teams in IT in particular. If we can reduce that slack time or even eliminate it in things like firewall change control processes, we can stop security being a blocker or being a holdup or slowing the rest of the IT operation down. And hopefully that means that cross-functionally people are working better together and maybe increase the satisfaction that the security team have from the rest of the organization as a customer. And finally, Palo Alto Networks, our whole reason of existence is to secure. By defining network security in reusable templates and making it dynamically adapt when we're in day 2 through the integrations with things like Terraform and Console, we can achieve what we believe is a much more comprehensive and consistent security posture, because, well, the consistency comes from the fact that we're always up to date with the changes and the most recent things that are happening in your infrastructure. And again, if you've been tasked maybe from the top with looking at a zero trust strategy, making sure only the right things talk to the right things at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, and not allowing an implicit trust, then this is the kind of thing that you're going to need to work towards. So if you want to learn more about any of these topics, there's 2 or 3 options here for you. Maybe it depends how you most prefer to learn or how you prefer to consume content. As well as being at KubeCon, hopefully if that happens, we're running our own virtual summit, 23rd to the 24th of March, a couple of months away. And this has webinars like this. We're having some technical breakout sessions, but also some hands-on. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, please feel free to come and join us. It's free to attend the Code to Cloud Summit. If you prefer to consume content more by reading, then HashiCorp and Palo Alto Networks together released a white paper a few months ago, which is all about what we've been talking today, securing the cloud operating model. So a bit more of a deep dive and very interesting, again, free to download. And finally, this one's self-service. If you're the type of person who maybe wants to learn more by getting hands-on, or maybe someone in your team is, you can go and grab a VM series next generation firewall, go and deploy it wherever you wish, public cloud, on-prem, even on your laptop on a hypervisor if you've got one, and see what it's all about. And feel free to give me a shout if you need any help with any of those. I'm easy to find on social and around the internet. And I hope one of those 3 is useful for you as a follow-up to learn more. So thank you for your time. Thank you again, HashiCorp, for inviting us. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Laurie.
James, thank you very much indeed. Very clear and very informative presentation. So thank you very much. Just a reminder that we will be sending all of these slides as a follow-up, and all the links that you've just seen there, of course, will be included, so you can go and download those. Further brief reminder, if you do have questions, please do drop them into the Zoom Q&A. We'll try and leave a little bit of time at the end if we possibly can, to cover those. And now I'd like to hand over to our final presenter. So Jason Broadbent is one of our senior solutions engineers, and he's part of our specialist emerging products team, who have Console and Nomad and our new products as well, in their scope of work. Jason's going to present to us on the Console roadmap, so some of the future stuff that's coming out. Jason, over to you. I think you're mid, Jason, unfortunately.
So thank you, Laurie. Thanks for that insight, James, into the Palo Alto network security piece. It's very interesting. My name's Jason Broadbent. As Laurie said, I'll be spending some next time just talking about some of the vision of Console, where Console came from, and where it's been, and how the transitions into this multifaceted architecture works and helps within the multi-cloud world. So I'll just take myself video so you can concentrate on the slides, and we'll carry on. So the vision of Console is kind of view of all those different services and different possibilities of utilizing those services and where that may be. And what we're trying to do is align it to what our customer requirements are and the asks as well. So we're very focused on our community and very focused on the way we support their transition and their journeys as well. And it's important that we make sure that we're fully inclusive. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of point solutions that fix particular elements or just concentrate on particular solutions. And that's good, but it doesn't really help when we're looking at that security piece across the whole multi-cloud technology, and making sure that we're providing those security postures and maintaining those security postures as those services change and adapt and move. And again, migration processes change for customers as well. And we have to be inclusive of all those different workflows and different runtimes. And as James talked about as well, we want to make sure that we're automating not just the public cloud elements, but also the traditional elements of the firewalls that exist in the load balancers as well, to make sure that they're part of that strategy, to make sure they're part of that day two automation. And as James talked about, that day two continuous delivery is sometimes overlooked because we have this, ticketed-based system that we put our requirements in and wait for it to come out to the other end. And this is where we see a massive saving going through that network automation process. And also moving into, a managed service environment where customers are looking at, having that type of SaaS integration where they're looking for the vendor to provide a fully managed service to help you reduce those applications, to help reduce that delivery time, to meet your higher SLAs, provide that discovery and health monitoring, and ultimately provide simple upgrade paths as well. And also ultimately, allowing customers to reduce that amount of infrastructure that is required and building a pay-as-you-grow for philosophy as well. So this is where we're starting to see transitions and journeys through the multi-cloud and integrating newer capabilities and functionalities. So what Console is, and before I go into what Console provides, some of you not really may know what Console is. And Console is a solution that provides you with a simple way to connect what you have, what you got, and authorize that connection of services to what is allowed to talk to who. And you can see from the earlier presentation with Pedro and James, and it highlights the importance of having an underlying solution that fundamentally understands where everything is and where those service and locations are. And from this high level diagram, you can see from utilizing different cloud providers that we have full visibility of all those microservices distributed across those different cloud environments. And this gives us that understanding now of putting those security postures in place and maintaining that fine-grained security that we need to make sure that we're working within this porous world of cloud. And also fundamentally manage that route of traffic between all of them. And it's like as if each service has its own little load balancer and firewall next to it, and knowing which service is healthy or not. Console scales to huge of thousands of services as discussed. And also it's not just about the scaling up, it's also about the decommissioning as well. You know, we have our tool sets that just continue to grow with list of IP address, whether that's your CMDB tool set, your DDI, or what I dare say, spreadsheets. You know, that gives you an insight, but it doesn't give you this near real-time understanding of all those services, what's being utilized, what's been decommissioned. And this is the scale of what Console brings to that equation. It brings that visibility, it brings you that awareness, and it also helps to give you that fundamental understanding, is your network behaving as intended as well. So having that observability is really, really key. And as you can see from the user interface as well, we can actually see all of those fundamental cloud offerings, whether that's private data centers, your public data centers, multiple console or Nomad cluster, sorry, multiple Nomad or Kubernetes clusters. This will actually provide you with all that information where you can quickly identify everything that you have. From an end-to-end security piece, you know, providing that one single secure control plane across that whole environment provides you a secure and an encrypted control plane, but more importantly, a secure and encrypted data plane also. So from our traditional networking within our own private data centers where traffic in flight was in clear and open text, we now have an end-to-end service to service fully secure encrypted traffic as well. So we're resolving, you know, problems that we've had in the industry for many, many years. And that's really important. Also, if we look into our data centers, you know, and the way things are changing, and, you know, we have these ephemeral devices now, you know, with the life of mortality, you know, we once upon a time had servers that we named, we loved, you know, we nurtured them, you know, and this is where we're starting to see that migration and change of philosophy and thought process across that strategy and journey. And Console is resolving those challenges that, you know, organizations of all sizes, you know, are countering with that microservice architecture. You know, there's ranges from that operating in various distributed environments and geography locations. And I'm trying to meet the needs of those secure and application traffic. And you see those challenges that Pedro and James highlighted, you know, within their sessions. But today's network must be quickly adaptable, and we need to ensure that all traffic is secure. And Console will enable those organizations to embrace that model. And if we quickly look into where Console came from a closed environment, and we can see that from how we used to depict it from our solutions, you know, Console's not a new solution, new technology. You know, we have a solution that's mature, that is evolving and changing to make sure that it evolves and changes as the multi-cloud strategy of our customers change. But more importantly, if we look how we started with the ultimate foundation of Console, and that's all about service discovery and managing that service health. And this is the key foundation stone, because once we have our service registry and discovery, we can ultimately now start understanding the distribution of those services. Because now that we've cataloged and put this into a catalog and created that database of source of truth, we now fundamentally can start really looking at how things look within our service architecture and how we look at those microservices as well. And as we continued that growth within Console, we added you know, a key value store that applications can make use of in a hierarchical key value stored process. And it can happen for many different purposes, including dynamic configuration, coordination, leader elections, and many more. You know, that simple API makes it very, very easy to use. Right from the get-go, we really understood that within a world of technology, there's not just one answer, there's not just one flavor of that runtime or workflow. We have to make sure that we consider all of those different workflows. We have to make sure we're compatible with all those different architectures. And that's key to us. You know, we've added into synchronizations into those clusters to make sure that we utilize their knowledge, and also making sure that we include all different flavors of those orchestration platforms as well, because we understand there's different variations. And we need to make sure that also, not just from today's point of view, but for tomorrow's point of view, what those changes, inclusions may be as well. And we've also got to be mindful that all of the original platforms that we integrate as well. So we have that flexibility. We made sure that all those different variations of varieties of those runtimes were included, and console would truly provide that integration across all those different runtimes. Also, it's important to make sure that we had that connectivity across those clouds as well. You know, even for a single cloud customer, it's important to make sure that any type of future decisions is not unhindered. So again, if you start your transition journey into AWS, there may be decisions in the future where you want to move to a different cloud based on different thought processes. And that could be true, you know, for the fact that different technologies will exist in there, or better cost models exist. So if we fundamentally have that foundation started from an early day, that gives you the capability now to have a look at how you can include all of those different cloud providers and make sure that that integration is seamless and simple as possible. Also providing that secure service communication across, you know, we can generate and we can distribute those certificates for those services to establish that connectivity as well. So that's really key. And from an organization perspective, is to make sure that we're providing that fully inclusive stack as well. We want to make sure that we integrate all of our technologies to provide our customers with an integration touch point, a simple touch point that allows that single control plane across those environments to give you that zero trust type of networking, and making sure that identity-based solution is maintained in a secure manner and maintained all through your environment. And the secure, you know, from a control plane, from a service-to-service communication, we enable that secure deployment, those best practices with automatic service-to-service encryption, identified-based authorization. We use that initial service discovery and service registry to make sure that we can manage those services by services rather than an IP address to enforce. I mean, that's very difficult now across this porous world of multi-cloud. And ultimately moving into different traffic patterns as well. So service mesh as a pattern to make sure that the integrations between different flavors of orchestration platforms, to make sure that we can communicate between cluster to cluster, and making sure then we provide that automated synchronization between them all, and making sure that from a overall understanding, we have that complete integration and complete secure best practices. And if we move into where we are today with console, we're now more of an open architecture. Our customers have identified, you know, where we can help them over time. And in the last several years, you know, we're moving from integrations from Key Vault now into utilizing our back-end secure process to make sure that our certificate management is done in a best practice. We've constantly changed and enhanced our user interface to make sure that our customers have the best user experience as possible. So again, that's constantly updating and changing, which is really important. And if we looked at, the day two operation of, certainly what was discussed earlier as well from an automation point of view, is if we have this database of information of where our services are, and we have that security posture already in place, then let's maintain that security posture as well. So if we have a day two automation, instead of asking for a ticket to write, please add this security posture to this extra VM, or identify an extra VIP or load balancing algorithm to some more instances for that particular service. Console has that fundamental understanding, and with that synchronization pattern into the likes of Palo Alto that was discussed earlier, we can now automate those day two automations to make sure that we're also maintaining into your security postures as well, and making sure those guardrails and compliances are met. So instead of waiting days or weeks for tickets to be answered by those security experts, this can automatically be managed now by utilizing Console Terraform's synchronization into Palo Alto and providing those tight security postures and compliance to your company. Visibility is key. Without visibility, you can't understand what's happening within your network. You can't fundamentally think if your best practices are being upheld. Is your network intended as behavior? Is your security rules being maintained all through the different cloud offerings? So tighter integrations into the likes of Prometheus, Grafana, and Datadog, that was what we've been establishing in the last 2 to 3 years to make sure that we can fully give you that full picture of how your strategy looks, and make sure you can then make decisions, make those enforcement rules, and also provide those information to your stakeholders to show that everything is behaving as intended. The continuation of multi-tenancy. So again, we've added features called admin partitions that give you separation of your business units to provide this multi-tenant approach, where you maybe have multiple customers that you need separacy. This can all be managed now through the likes of admin partitions as well. So multiple namespacing, multiple customers, this can all be secured and managed as independent workloads as well. Nice tight Kubernetes integrations, as you expect. This is really important to HashiCorp. We understand how popular Kubernetes is and how different flavors of Kubernetes are. So making sure that we have that platform orchestration very tight within our decision making of feature enhancements is pretty key. We make sure that we have catalog synchronization in there, the likes of deployment through Helm charts to make it very simple and single deployments. We also have other features in there, likes of transparent proxy that basically reduces the configuration, so you don't have to point to upstream applications. With the knowledge that within the clusters, this can make secure decision making and route the traffic correctly through DNS. We're constantly integrating our HashiStack to make sure that we can provide you with a full secure, full orchestrated solution, and make sure that we can provide you with all those integrations and also all those best practices that we suggest to our community. And also HCP that Pedro talked about, console, managing console on-prem can be quite complex. You require a certain amount of infrastructure to stand it all up. There's a certain amount of operational overhead to manage all those extra requirements. So having a fully managed infrastructure, for users just to manage and concentrate on your own applications, but also have, guaranteed SLAs from HashiCorp, and also it's maintained by our SREs as well. So having that, security blanket of console and also that infrastructure managed by our own team to allow you to concentrate on your applications and services takes a lot of stress and pressure away to allow you now to manage a pay-as-you-go type of model. Continuation of enhancing console, multi-tenancy is really important because it's a key capability that we see within our customers, whether that's service providers or even just traditional customers that have multifaceted business units or multi customers, making sure that we can provide that multiple separation across multiple clouds as well. And admin partitions is part of that project that allows that federation across those multiple clouds to allow those multiple separation and multiple security pieces to be built on top of it as well. And as we expand our integrations into the likes of Kubernetes orchestrations, we're trying to simplify that approach as well. From a complex type of orchestration platform, we're adding, console CLI elements in there. So where we utilize Helm, we can now put into single click deployments where Helm's in the back end of that as well. So that's a constant enhancement that we're seeing as well. And customers, are looking to see from a orchestration platform where it is complex is how we can continue that simplified approach. A continuation of expansion of data automation, including, multi-vendors, because we understand there's different levels of security. We understand micro-segmentation as part of that strategy. We also see that, do vendor approaches as well. So if we can automate as much as that and spend less time in that deployment piece and ticketing piece, then that becomes a lot easier for our customers. It becomes a lot easier where we're not waiting for manual intervention, and we can get all those services deployed so you can meet your customer SLAs as well. We're obviously going to continue HCP deployments. We're obviously making it compatible to a feature rich as on self-service, and also expanding across many more different cloud operators as well. So that's a continued strategy and a continual growth from HashiCorp's perspective. We'll continuously integrate into our HashiStack to give you our best of breed in that multi-cloud world. And also integrating new capabilities as well. So yes, we have a lot of microservices. We have lots of different workflows and different runtimes, but we're also mindful that for tomorrow's world, where we're looking into more of a functionless, a serverless type of world, and maybe also just trying to think about what may be different, because obviously the last 18 months to 2 years, there's been a lot of changes within workflows. So we've got to be mindful and keep our fingers on the pulse to make sure we integrate into any other changes in the future as well. The integration of ECS as well, from a HashiCorp perspective, we are pleased, that we can announce, console service mesh is now available and deploy as ECS within AWS. And this integration enables users to select console as their service mesh on AWS for ECS deployments. I mean, this is really big for us as well, because if you think about it, and some of the surveys that, we read, according to AWS 2020 Container Security Survey, 56% of respondents are saying ECS and on EC2 or Fargate is going to be utilized to manage their container deployments. So it's not just about the likes of EKS and Kubernetes. We still have to make sure that we are continually looking at all the other different platforms and workflows. API gateway. I mean, again, something that's really, really big, within customer requirements. We're not just looking at east to west traffic flows. We have to understand that from outside of console, the service mesh market is evolving, and we have to make sure that we are incorporating some of those different capabilities. So north-south type of traffic patterns, and we have to make sure those integrated solutions for managing those east to west and north-south traffic postures are integrated in our technology as well. And our API gateway will provide that as well. And we are here as an organization to solve workflows. We're here to resolve, all those different capabilities within those multi-cloud and multi-workflow environments, rather than looking at fixing specific technologies. Console is one of the most deployed integrated service application solutions in the market. It resolves that visibility and those connectivities of microservices. And we understand the ever evolving world of multi-cloud. We keep our finger on the pulse. We keep adding new capabilities. We look at network automation. We're looking at agentless environments to make sure that we provide all our capabilities to our customers. If we have a quick summary of what console is, it's providing an automatic mapping of where those services are and the health of those services as well. So not relying on different technologies to try and get different understandings of where that network is or what those services are. It's really key that we try to reduce that complexity of technologies and give you that capability through console. We're trying to automate some of those manual errors that James talked about earlier on. So again, from deployment of, from a DevOps perspective, from that particular application, is to make sure then as it adds or when it reduces, we're making sure that we're maintaining those tight security postures around it. Also making sure that we're managing your postures as well, and making sure that we meet your compliance and guardrail elements as well, so we can have those guardrails wrapped around it. And fundamentally is to make sure that we provide an agnostic approach to all those different workloads and in all those different environments. And if I circle back to the call of action that Pedro did, we're here to help. We're here to provide a lot more information. We can give you that real depth and insight into those different flavors, whether you're looking at a self-service type of architecture or whether you're looking for a fully managed solution from HashiCorp. And we can run into some of the depth of workshops where you can have some hands-on understanding of these integrations, network automation, multi-cloud connectivity, and then we can run through you and your teams and your practitioners how and when this is possible. So thank you for your time, and back to you, Laurie.
Jason, thank you very much indeed, and hope everyone found that useful to see the future direction of console. So bang on time, exactly finished at 11:30, which is unusual for us. But first of all, thank you very much indeed to everybody who carved this time out of their day, and anyone watching this on a replay for making the time. There was one question, I think, in the Q&A which was left unanswered, and maybe Jason, you could very quickly take this one, which is, what are the main differences between console versus HCP console?
Sure, that's a great question. So HCP has provided you with that fully managed solution. So some of the infrastructure that you need to build out console, we'll take that responsibility away, so we can manage that service piece that you may need to build. So that infrastructure that you'd have to build up, maintain, operate, and manage, we take that away. So from a HCP perspective, it's a fully managed solution. It takes away some of the operational burdens of upgrades. It's also a a pay-as-you-go or pay-as-you-type-of-grow proposal. So you're not building a big infrastructure from day one and not utilizing all of it. So from HCP, it's a fully managed solution from HashiCorp. From a standard console, that's a self-managed solution. So that is something that you provision, you maintain, you operate, and make sure that it has all the capabilities that you need to manage. Although we will provide that support from the back end part of it.
Awesome. Thank you very much indeed. So with that, as we say, we do encourage you to get on with Call. So please, once we send out the links, sign up for a workshop. We wish you a great rest of day, and thank you very much for your attendance and interest.